Mr. Littlejohns.
I'm Bryan, right?
And we are the Men Who Stare at Cups live from Phoenix Ridge. Today, Bryan, I am declaring a pandemic.
Oh, is it the monkeypox?
No, don't say that. That's an actual thing. No. The thing I'm saying is entirely made up and isn't real, but is much worse than monkeypox.
Oh, okay. What's that?
And there's no pokey jabby guys for what I'm about to talk about.
Is it, it's LGBT month.
No, there's definitely pokey jabby guys for LGBT. Okay, that's how we're going. Okay, look.
What is it?
You know, I am declaring a state of emergency for what I believe is the current crisis to hit the Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, what was it? Louder with Crowder, Ben Shapiro. I'm hitting all of the guys.
The intellectual dark web.
The intellectual dark web, the Brett Weinstein's masculinity. I am saying we do not have masculinity. What we have is a crisis of existential ennui.
Existential ennui?
That's right. Existential ennui.
Ennui?
Would you like to describe ennui? I think ennui is a great word. I also like the alliteration. I think the alliteration is cute, but I actually think that more than the alliteration being cute, I think it's actually really on point.
Well, the word sounds like what it means. It does. Which I would say listless. Maybe like nihilistic a little bit. Right.
I mean, nihilistic is more purposeful than ennui. Yeah, ennui is like
bleh.
Yeah. Ennui is like a straight zero.
Yeah.
With no hope of going to one, and no motivation to go, like no chaos-driven anything to go backwards. It's like a literal standstill where you realize that you hate your life for 1 minute, and then you're thankful that that's the only thing that's actually bothering you, and then you just keep going about your day.
Sure.
So I'm reading a book right now. I just started it. It's an old book from 1977 by a guy named Don DeLillo. And the book is called Players. And ironically, it's about like a fake terrorist attack at the World Trade Center.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't know that that's what this book was about.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff. But the funny part about this is that the main characters, and the spoiler alert, look, it's been out since 77, so if you haven't read it yet, like, I feel nothing here. The book is called The Players because essentially the main characters get involved with, like, terror plots and having affairs and doing all this stuff, not because they want to or because they're ideologically driven, but just because they're bored.
Okay. It's a good reason to do
that. And so they're like acting like they care to inject some sort of feeling into their life, but they don't actually have any ideology driving their actions.
Sure.
That is the state of the Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro fanboys, in my opinion.
Sounds like it could be a Chuck Palahniuk book.
It could be a Chuck Palahniuk book. Well, remember that the guy who was the editor for Don DeLillo, Gordon Lish, is the guy who was the editor to Tom Spanbauer, who was Chuck Palahniuk's editor.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, Don DeLillo is like, he's basically like an uncle.
That was esoteric, Drew. You know about editors of...
Well, I do know editors.
Do you read the credits all the way through at the end of the movie and go, oh, that's my favorite key grip?
No, I do have I do have favorite caterers and I do have favorite medics, and that is actually true. Tony's 5-Star Catering is my favorite caterer, but that's not what I'm getting at. Is that so this idea of this style of writing, which is called burnt tongue writing,
right? Okay,
I think we talked about
it before. Yeah. Explain it real quick because it's interesting.
Burnt tongue is where you write in a narrative way, the way that people actually talk.
Right.
Rather than writing like Bryan looked at his girlfriend and he loved her. You would say Bryan looked at his girlfriend as though she were the first chocolate chip cookie he ever ate.
Okay.
Right after he had that first bite, and her eyes melted his heart like that warm cookie going down into his gut. Blah, blah, blah. So burnt tongue sounds a little bit more like that. It can also...
Hurt, kind of like raw.
Yeah, very in the body, in the moment, as it spoke. And if there was some sort of like Bryan vernacular that I could throw in there, like his mama used to make these cookies and she would call the cookies, Crisco Buttercups. Then she would have looked at you like as though she were a Crisco Buttercup, and you would actually throw in as much interpersonal vernacular using interpersonal slang.
So the alliteration is it's more like primal.
Yeah, it's very deep. Okay. It's you are in somebody's brain.
Yeah.
Like in their what they say is ontology. Like you're in their universe of existence, not just some linear thought process of a character going about their day. Okay. But as I'm reading through this book, I cannot escape the fact that if you got 1,000 existentialists and you put them in a room, they would not walk out of there and do anything.
No.
They would not be able to agree on anything to do.
So we're kind of shitting on existentialism today, right?
Today is a full tilt shit on it because I talked to a couple friends of mine.
I'd like to do that.
I talked to Steph and I talked to a few other guys.
Okay.
And I said, hey guys, what do you think about like the existentialist idea of getting people together? And the conclusion was, for what?
Do anything.
Yeah, the conclusion was literally, for what? And
it's pretty funny.
I'm trying to answer this question of why would you want to get a bunch of Jungians in a room?
It sounds like a joke. Something about screwing in a light bulb.
It does. It does sound like that. And
give me a week, I'll come up with it.
Right. Right. 100 Jungians. How many Jungians does it take to screw in a light bulb? I don't know. One to write books about it for 35 years and another one to read Nietzsche and just to walk in and screw up the light bulb.
Yeah. Right. That works.
That works.
Yeah.
It's a little on the nose, but yeah.
Yeah. You did all right.
So existential ennui, and because this is the conclusion I've come to.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to not like the word even
existential,
or like wanting to be too much associated with it. I mean, I just think for some people, there's a stage in your life, there's an intersection in the road, and you might end up taking that hard left down that weird road that doesn't seem to go anywhere. That's existentialism. Because there's something about...
You mean the 19-year-old Nietzsche phase?
Sure. And I don't want to knock that. But I do think it is... It probably should be like, okay, 19 to 24, and then never look back. Like, don't ever think about it.
Right, and then,
shit again.
Then just go read some Ram Dass and Alan Watts and just be done. Like,
yeah, or you could read your esoteric books or whatever and enjoy it, and that's all well and good. But like to really have like any kind of existential crisis or be trying to figure out the meaning of life or whatever, that's
Viktor Frankl said it best from the meaning of life side. When somebody says, "Well, what is the meaning of life?" and he's like, "Well, what'd you do yesterday?" I think the problem though is that with most of the existential ennui that I see around me, which is that, and even in Steph's answer, even the answer of why, right? There's its own kind of sad, subtle drip of ennui, even in the answer. There is a hopelessness in the answer. That all of this thought doesn't actually matter.
I'm not editing that out.
No, it's fine. That's like the first time my phone has ever rang in a podcast.
That's actually true. I was just about to give you shit, but that's literally never
for a
happened.
guy who has as many different.
Yeah, no. This is the stereotypical guy that always has the headset on, and you'll be like, "Hi, Drew," and he's not there.
Yeah, I totally do that. But my phone doesn't necessarily ring all of the time.
Right. Yeah.
It's mostly just that I'm usually listening to something. But I'm worried. I guess what I'm saying is I'm worried, Brian. So here's what I'm worried about. Every what seems to be 40 years, we take a trip around the existential sun.
Okay.
All right. So here we are, 2022, 2023, right? In 2018, we just took a big trip around the sun from 2016. It's like a 4-year trip. It's awesome, right? 30 years before that, we had the late 80s, early 90s is when we have Iron John, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. We have, in the Christian circles, we have what's called the Promise Keepers movement. We have a lot of this sort of men's type rights type stuff, right? Cool. 30 years before that, you have Jung and Eric Neumann in the 50s, right?
Right.
All those guys in the 50s. And 30 years before that, you get down to, or 40 years before that, you get into the Nietzsche type stuff. 40 years before Nietzsche, you get Schopenhauer. 40 years before Schopenhauer, you get Kierkegaard.
Okay.
All right. So it seems to me that every 30 to 40 years, we just take and Dostoevsky sits in that Nietzsche-Jung time frame.
Sure.
Right.
All right.
And Frankl is in the 40s. And then you get the guys that kind of carry the torch in the in-between years.
Right.
So like Alan Watts was a huge Jungian, carried the torch. Joseph Campbell, I consider these guys like a shamanistic, like shaman outliers for existentialism.
Okay.
In that you wouldn't call Alan Watts an existentialist. And you wouldn't call Joseph Campbell an existentialist. But they totally are carrying the Jung torch.
Yeah,
Right.
I tend to use the term existentialist as like far more broad than specific than what the term actually means, right? I think most people probably do. It's like,
How do you think most people?
the kind of like Uber philosophy where you're trying to figure out the meaning of life and like why people do things. Yeah.
I would say 2 years ago, I took the word existentialist as a religious concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it became much more of my religion.
Well, it's like you create your own existence, right? Like your intentions, your will. Tabula rasa. You are the author of your own story.
Right.
Right.
I took that very seriously.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think so.
I took that really seriously a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not so the problem. There is a problem with doing this, by the way. So if you decide to create your own universe and you work really hard and you build the universe, and then you wake up one morning and you dislike the universe, you only have you to blame for it.
Ooh,
it's a very
that's interesting.
It is a terrifying.
If you
reality.
leave it up to God, God's like a great scapegoat, like punching bag. Like if anyone can take it, it's God.
Totally.
He's fine.
Yep.
I mean, look at Jesus. Like, wow.
Man, he is the scapegoat for the universe. And actually, the Bible actually technically calls him a scapegoat. Because scapegoat originates from the Torah.
Ah, right. Okay.
It's an actual,
It's
Western.
an actual
It's an actual goat that you actually
sacrifice.
put blood on, and you let it and you put the sacrificial blood on the goat, and you let it go into the wilderness. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be kind of like for all the sins of the people to be forgotten for the year.
Right.
So, yeah, when you decide to become an existentialist, you basically say there is no scapegoat, there is no way out, there is only me doing this deal and doing what I find to be meaningful. There's a number. There's in my pursuit of this, whatever this kind of existential religious pursuit is, which is where you wake up and you literally fill every second of every day doing something that you find meaningful. And if you're suffering while doing something meaningful, great. If you're happy while doing something meaningful, great. It literally doesn't matter. You just get up and just do it.
You're just snorting up all that sweet, sweet meaning. That's all based entirely on your
becomes so
responsibility.
tyrannical.
It is.
It is such a tyrannical...
It starts off as liberating, I think. It's very liberating at first, and then it becomes...
To realize that you are not powerless is a liberating thought. But then to realize that you could do something about everything is a tyrannical thought.
Yeah. This is a bit Luciferian.
What?
The whole concept, I think.
It kind of, is it really?
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
that's
in a way, you could sort of say, like, okay, you're jealous of God as an existentialist. Like, you want to take on this burden, this, like, responsibility. I can be responsible for everything. And it's like, well, are you sure? Are you sure you really want that? Like, and for the right reasons, even? You know, so the whole metaphor would be Lucifer being jealous of God and wanting, like, you know, that level of power and responsibility when it's not
Well,
what he's meant to.
If you were to marry the meaning that you're doing with a messianic come worship me complex, I would agree. Without the desire to be worshipped by lower beings, like some, you know, cult leader, I guess the Luciferian aspect of it breaks down only because the Luciferian part for me. Now I will say this though,
like he wanted to be worshipped by humans.
Right? He wanted to be an object of worship, yeah,
sure.
As opposed to just saying. But now there is.
But more metaphorically, you could just look at it as self-worship. Like if you're like, I am responsible for everything, then in a way you're kind of putting yourself on a pedestal, perhaps next to God. Maybe I'm stretching this a little bit, but it reminds me of like.
Well, the seven I wills of Satan in the book of Isaiah, where he says, "I will ascend to the throne of the Most High. I will become like God." And he says these 7 different "I will" statements.
Yeah.
And so the idea of "I will." Is kind of a Christian evil nomenclature.
Sure.
Like
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Yeah.
And I agree with you that when you sit up and you say, I could technically be responsible for everything. And I recently had this thought about arguing with people. I got in an argument with somebody the other day. And what they did in the argument was, if they were wrong in moment A, they would go back in time to moment B, and they would just keep going back in time until they were no longer responsible anymore. Okay. So you can actually do this. You can, so just as a footnote, you can do this and win any argument ever.
Okay.
You just keep going back in time until it's not your fault.
Well, I wasn't born yet, so F you.
I wasn't born yet. And you could go all the way back to I wasn't born yet. And I have been...
So obviously, I'm not the one who shat in the urinal.
So this is one of those crazy ideas that but on the other hand, you could go back in time to the point where you could have been responsible for anything. In the same way that you can go back in time to win an argument to become non-responsible, you can go back in time to become responsible. And this is the thing that I have found to be hilarious in arguing with anybody. You just decide whether or not this is an argument you want to be responsible or not responsible for, and you pick which moment in time becomes the moment in which you judge where the argument theoretically began. And then you just start there. And if they go back in time, then you just go back one more step. And you just keep doing that until you decide. It's kind of exhausting, but that's the existentialist dilemma. At what point in time did you become responsible for something? Right?
Yeah. In the womb, obviously.
I mean, obviously.
In the womb, I was like...
It's Adam's fault.
I think, therefore I am.
So...
I don't need this freaking umbilical cord. Nonsense. This is a prison.
Let me out of here! Let me out, woman!
Little Stewie.
Yeah. So I would look at this and I think, okay, is existentialism in fact just the art of picking a moment in time when you either were or were not responsible? It's really weird, actually.
It is weird.
Okay, so this all gets back to the point that it's kind of dumb.
Yeah. Maybe you're just supposed to take responsibility for, like, your actions in the closest vicinity of time. Let's get a little zen here. Like, the past and the future, they're abstractions. They're not real. They don't exist. They never have existed. They never will. Okay? And so the more time you spend in these like abstractions that are like meta realities based on other meta realities, the less you are presently here. So if we're talking about taking responsibility for things, you know, if I take this coffee and I splash it in your face,
Yeah.
and then say I didn't do that, okay, well, I'm failing,
Right.
and I'm being a dumb animal, really. You know, I'm
Okay,
using my
right.
mind to poorly attempt to obfuscate and cover up my obvious actions.
Right.
Not taking responsibility. Right. And I don't like people who aren't willing to take basic responsibility for things presently. That's just a very bad quality. It's very childish. Right? It's a very, very childish thing. So, but do you need to, as far as taking responsibility goes, do you really need to go too far beyond the present?
Well, that's just it. So
Maybe that's the question.
Well, because that's what decides okay, so the level of responsibility that you're choosing to take is what dictates the amount of suffering you put off to today for tomorrow.
Okay.
So, right, if you want to put off like everything today because you think that in 10 years you got to you have your house paid off, you got to have enough money to put your kids put your kids in college, put your folks in an adult home, right? You have a 50% chance of getting a divorce. You got to put the alimony, the child, all that sort of stuff aside.
Yeah.
So you want to get all that stuff done, right? You turn suffering up to 11. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, honestly, that you wind up having to do all those things, right? Whereas you could just tell everybody in the beginning, no, I'm not taking care of you. No, I'm not paying for your college. And no, we're never getting a divorce. And then you'd never have to worry about any of it, right? But if you want to, depending on how far out you want to look, so like I was looking at, Phoenix Ridge and doing some stuff here and trying to figure out the kind of the community side. So you have all this kind of investment, right?
Yeah.
Of saying, okay, well, if we're going to do a community, then we're going to need a place to gather. If we're going to have a place to gather to do things, the issue just keeps coming up with.
What do you want to do? Or
Nobody wants to do. This goes back to what I was saying last week, which is if you don't have an object worth dying for, or something that's a villain that's actually attacking you, that you need
a concrete problem to be solved.
That's right. If you don't have an actual concrete thing, either a concrete villain or a concrete aspiration, either one is fine.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like it should be that complicated, really. You just have...
Well, you can't maintain a sense of Americana independence and have either one of those things. Because then your neighbor becomes your enemy. Because you're
maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Independence. Americana independence. Okay.
Is Americana independence a part of the existential ennui?
Okay. So you really have been studying your socialism lately, huh?
Well, I don't believe that Americana independence is a step forward in the human condition.
I mean, it's a little vague. I think it really depends on how you define it. Okay. I mean, and there's a lot you can say, like perhaps the current, hyper corporate, atomized everyone in little boxes with their ticky tacky, you could.
Yep.
There's that.
That's obviously bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think that was originally the vision. The vision originally was like, hey, we don't need the crown lording over us. We can, people who want to take risks and try new things and be responsible for their own actions can go ahead and do that. And that's like the spirit of freedom. Not necessarily, I don't need anybody. Like independence. It's not necessarily, maybe what was intended or what was meant by that. It's just sort of like become that.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
No, it's totally fine. So like I look at it like this. You walk into somebody's house and they have a big giant movie theater. And you think, man, that's super awesome. I'll bet that's really cool to own a movie theater. Right?
Yeah.
Now, would you rather watch movies in your private movie theater, or do you think it'd be more fun, like in the 1940s, when if you wanted to catch the news on the war in Germany, you had to go to the movie theater, sit in a room with 200 other people, watch the news together in the communal space, right? And then You would talk about it afterwards, maybe grab some coffee. What I'm concerned about with Americana independence that I really disagree with is the idea of bringing the communal parts of our lives and then owning the independent nature of the thing into the house. We don't go play basketball at a basketball. Yes, we have our own arcade games. We have our own movie theaters.
The arcade thing makes me sad. Like, I was watching Stranger Things the other day, and like, you know, all the kids are in the arcade, and then there's they're trying to figure out who got the Dig Dug high score. I'm like, that's awesome. Just
Right.
the whole, like, you're outside of your house. It's a place, it's a sacred place that's really meaningful to you.
So if I go by a church on the
You
street,
know?
I saw a church for sale the other day.
Mm-hmm.
If I go by that church, no, it's not. If I go by a church, is it a church?
What did Jesus say church is?
Jesus actually never used the word church, by the way.
I thought, isn't there something like when two people commune?
When two or more of you are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be.
So the problem is everybody goes out in Americana, late stage capitalism. So now we'll get into some of the Kool-Aid. So the problem with late stage capitalism is that everybody wants to own the liminal space, but the liminal space only exists because other people are there. And if you own it, nobody's there. And if you own it, you have power over it.
Kind of reminds me of the people who buy a condo, say like in Austin, Texas, and the part of town, one of the many parts of town that has a very active, loud music scene. And you buy this expensive condo because it's in the cool part of town, and then you complain that you hear a blues guitar on a Wednesday night and you smell barbecue. And those barbecue and guitar are the reasons why the condo is such a valued thing in the first place. Like,
people want to own liminality in the same way that men...
Own liminality. Can you define that?
Yeah, it's the thing that's the most terrifying to me. It's the thing that I'm realizing that if I'm not careful, it's what Phoenix Ridge actually winds up becoming, which is actually quite evil. So liminality is the idea of going to a space.
Phoenix Ridge is Drew's property, by the way.
Yeah.
That he's hoping to do some communal activities here.
Liminal activities is probably a better way. I want to put it that way. So to describe a liminal space is a space where you go, you get lost in the crowd, or you don't own the space. Nobody really owns it. And so the first marker of liminal is a general absence of recognizable hierarchy.
Okay.
Like, you go to a bar. You might see the bar manager. There's somebody who's definitely in charge somewhat, but there's enough like batshit craziness going on that he's not really in control. He's just like generally guiding the ship, right?
Yeah.
But the bar is a liminal space. Larger spaces like Vegas is a liminal space.
Okay.
Okay? Disneyland is a liminal space. The more ropes they put up, the less liminal it becomes. The more structured it becomes, the less liminal it is.
Right. Okay.
So when you take other liminal spaces, like, okay, so...
A dream.
No, the arcade is a perfect liminal space. Who got the Dig Dug high score? We don't know, right? It's this liminal thing. It's like an organism. And when you jump into that, you actually become a part of the organism. You lose part of Bryan.
I know this exact feeling. I know. There is an exact feeling when I can officially sort of let go of the narrative.
Yeah.
Of tabula rasa, of all of that shit. And I don't want to say that it's necessarily submissive, like suddenly I'm a passenger and I have no more control. It's actually more like I've let go of the illusion of control, which has allowed me to be more actively engaged in the collective reality that's actually happening right now. Ironically, giving me more control.
Right.
And then it becomes more like a movie.
Yes.
It becomes more like I have no idea what's going to happen next. And then that makes it more exciting. And
openness goes up.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So when you're a kid, going to the public pool was a liminal experience. And I was like the only kid who was like 11 who could like do like a 1.5 off the high dive. Like, I mean, it was like one of the very few places where like I was still, I felt like I would walk into a liminal space and it was like you were there and you're in it, right? The arcade is a liminal space. Backpacking is a liminal space. There's all the, and whenever you see like advertising, they want you to believe that if you get this product, you will enjoy liminality. Buy this guitar and you will suddenly be a part of the liminal rock god scene, or you will be making music and your YouTube views will be going up and you'll all be lost in this community of awesome music that you're making. The terror of American independence is that we believe that we can own this communal liminal space. It's terrifying. And the problem is that now we all do own it. There is no news. There's just your curated news. There's no YouTube feed. There's just your suggested YouTube feed. Everybody owns the equivalent of a movie theater. Everybody can just stream church into their house.
Yeah, you can tap into whatever reality, whatever narrative you want, and it exists there.
And every liminal space now is a chore and a duty.
Duty.
To go and buy fresh fruit. This is my favorite part of this player's book that I read. The wife goes to a farmer's market to buy fresh fruit. Not because she likes to eat fresh fruit, but because she likes the feeling of the cold water while she rinses the fresh fruit, and she likes the way that it looks, and she eats one grape, right? Or has a bite of an apple, right? But then, after having sex that night, she doesn't want to eat the fruit because she feels obligated to eat the fruit. She just wants dirty pizza.
Ah.
I found and I mean, and if you don't get this now, like, you will get it. At some point in time, you will watch this happen. Have you ever seen this happen?
I had a roommate who every time he went grocery shopping, he would buy all these vegetables. And they looked really nice, and then he would just shove them in the fridge, and that was that. And I remember kind of going through the fridge one day, and then there was just layers that just, getting progressively more rotten. And he would just add, it's like he was just composting his, sense of, virtue in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator. And it was just the dumbest thing.
Yes. and it's the same thing.
And I was the one that cleaned it out.
Imagine going to, the social farmer's market, okay? Like, you go to a farmer's market, okay? You're going to buy everything that your society needs, okay? Of course you're going to buy church. But when you finally eat it, look, you would much rather be eating Netflix than church, okay?
Netflix is pizza.
Okay? You would much rather be, eating some smokes and a nice lager than a
I'd love to eat some smokes right now.
Then have a
I quit.
Yeah, I'm what?
How are you doing?
6 days.
You haven't had one?
Nope.
Okay. I've been nursing a pack for about a week, which I consider quit.
I'm at
I don't want one right now.
Let's see, zero since I don't know, 5 or 6 days or whatever.
Nice.
Anyways, so you're going to go to the store, but all of the things that are actually good for you, you do things that are good for you now because you have to. It's so easy to be just a piece of shit that it's hard to actually be not that. It's so easy to just eat pizza and ice cream and get diabetes because it's cheaper. It's easier. It tastes better and you feel awesome every time you eat it.
Diabetes.
Well, not eating diabetes, but close to.
How's this for an idea? A novel about a diabetic vampire, so he only feeds off of obese women. It's like Twilight for fat girls. I was thinking about that. I think
So bad.
probably make some money. Anyway,
It's well. So this is the existential ennui,
sorry.
which is that all liminal space, which everybody recognizes as the best space, is now right there in the comfort of your living room. Meaningless, because the thing that made it meaningful was that it was not in your living room. That was the point. And now here we are. You never have to see another person ever again. But aren't you enjoying your faux liminality? But wait, I feel like I should be doing something. Oh, I'm so sorry that you feel like you should have more meaning in your life.
Let's steal man for fun. I know people who are very, very active in online communities to the point where it almost seems like it's supplementing the real thing. They have their
Okay.
say, I know people who play like role-playing games online, like the tabletop kind of thing.
Sure.
And then they have their little communities around that. And then they actually do meet up in real life. You have, obviously like Telegram groups and stuff that people meet.
I mean, you and I met on the internet.
And we totally did. And then you have, gaming groups and stuff. And then eventually you will have the metaverse, which is an extremely social thing.
Sure.
And then the metaverse will give you a sense of location. Like you have gone somewhere. You have left your house. You have gone to a communal space. And you have participated and potentially satisfied that need for church, if you will, communion, community, however you want to say it. Is that good? Is that bad? Is it the real thing? Is it purely evil? Is it 100% bad, evil, smash, destroy the metaverse? Or is it actually maybe good for some people because it's at least better than complete atomization?
So I haven't finished building the house yet. Once I finish building the house, I'll be able to tell you whether or not it was worth it. If it wasn't worth it, then the metaverse is the best thing ever made. If it is worth it, then the metaverse is the worst thing ever made. But I don't actually know the answer yet because I'm not done making it yet. Personally, I'm just.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So, what does that mean when you're done doing the repairs and stuff on your house and getting it to a place where you're ready to go? Hey, we're doing this thing on Saturdays where we make brisket and then I don't know, we have some kind of project, right? Does it look something like this? We have some kind of project where we're all kind of building something or learning how to do something cool, and then maybe taking turns doing that at everybody else's house, and then maybe a little bit of Bible study or something, and then some Viking chants. Is that
I mean, that's the original hope, right?
Yeah,
is for something like that.
So, something cool like that.
Something cool like that.
Yeah.
And
first Saturday every month.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a liminal luncheon or something like that, So what's funny to me, because I can agree that I think what you said is a powerful statement, that the metaverse will provide locational context.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be enough to make it worth it. For example, in my World of Warcraft days, you would see somebody from your guild. Yeah, maybe I remember one time we met up in Vegas and we met up with a bunch of guys from the Warcraft guild, right? But you spend your whole time while you're in Vegas talking about these in-game locations, and the in-game locations have as much inside jokes and whatever as the actual physical stairwell you're actually looking at, because you've all been there a bunch of times, right? Enough times to be able to make jokes about it. So in that way, a digital universe can certainly provide locational context.
Yeah.
There is the idea, though, the vibrational, our interconnected vibrational patterns, part of the liminal experience. I think
haptic feedback, man.
Haptic feedback. Okay, go for it.
Well, it's like you're there, but you're not. But there are vibrations. If you can kind of feel the presence of somebody else around you because, your little arm pad is tingling, maybe that's enough. Maybe plants can grow from artificial light or from sunlight, right?
Okay.
Maybe it's something like that.
So, yeah, the question, I guess, is just whenever I talk to guys, every guy basically just says the same thing. I'll give you so this old man I used to care for, by care for him, we found out that he had cancer. So I took him to like 160 doctor's appointments. And this is important to talk about.
Okay.
So he was going to leave his estate to the church, and the church wasn't quite ready for the estate. I knew this was the case, and so I thought, okay, well, I better care for this guy because he doesn't have anybody else to care for him. And so I did this stuff, and in the beginning I was like, okay, it's like cancer. Like, I'll take him through some doctor's appointments. He'll be okay. 160 doctor's appointments, like 4 surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, the whole thing. He recently passed away, and he lived for an extra like 3 years. And he wound up dying exactly as he wanted to, in his bed, in his home, surrounded with his pastor and his nurse, right? And I was talking with this pastor there, who's a friend of mine, whose father was a Vietnam vet, recovering alcoholic, smoking, kind of paranoid guy. He died when this pastor was 14. And then his stepdad also had a father who was from Vietnam, or stepfather from Vietnam, smoked, kind of paranoid, died of cancer at 22. And then finally this old man, Bo, who the pastor was there and also was Vietnam vet, recovering alcoholic, right, died of cancer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, Drew? I can just imagine my father, my stepfather, and Bo all sitting around in their ugly chairs, smoking, drinking coffee, and complaining about the news together.
Aw.
It was so touching. Because there's something about that's all. That's the only thing guys want. And then you put one woman in the room, and some guy's going to go, well, I want the woman, so I'm going to go build the Taj Mahal. And then every other guy goes, well, I guess I got to go build the Taj Mahal. Yeah. And then they all could have literally just sat there in their crappy chairs.
Living out the Big Lebowski.
Being the dude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love, so something Drew kind of blew my mind with is, he mentioned like every woman hates the Big Lebowski. And I thought about it and I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not. I think I've met maybe a very small amount of women who like the movie just because they're into cult movies and stuff. But generally speaking, that is true. That movie does not, I don't think, resonate with women in general. And of course, Drew's argument, which is kind of brilliant, is he's like, well, yeah, it's a movie about how easy men are to please and how little they actually need if they're not like married or actively pursuing women.
What do you want? I'll have a sarsaparilla. Sarsaparilla and a cigarette.
Bowling.
And some bowling with my friends.
And some guys to shoot the shit with and like have dumb little
have little micro adventures.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be grandiose. Of course the movie is grandiose, but I think that's the irony of it, is it doesn't need to be, because they were
perfectly happy just bowling.
Perfectly happy.
They were perfectly happy after bowling.
Sure.
And they were perfectly happy in the middle of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, yes. So going back to the existential ennui. So let's say you take an existentialist and you put him in a group of guys and you take all the women out of the room, first of all. Like, I'm just going to eliminate all the possibilities that come with women. We'll just kind of put them over here, okay? Mm-hmm. You're not ready for this yet.
Nope.
You have way too much going on the inside.
Okay.
Okay, so we've gotten rid of that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Next, we're going to put you into a liminal situation. Like going to a bar, backpacking trip, whatever. Okay? We're going to remove the hierarchy thing. All right? If you find that you are in a liminal space and you still feel lost and uncomfortable, you're sick. You're sick. You're so filled with existential dread and ennui and listlessness, you're sick. The only way to get better is cowbell, baby, bang. No. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You get rid of the women thing. I'm going to put you in a place with no hierarchy. If you have no idea who you are in the absence of women or hierarchy, you're sick.
Spiritually ill.
You are spiritually ill. You are emotionally lost.
Which could very well make you physically ill.
Which will make you, well, I mean, it certainly will deplete your serotonin and makes you feel like a non-person.
Ugh.
So if you wonder...
I felt that way before.
Oh, I have to.
Fleeting, yeah.
100%.
I don't feel like I've ever been stuck there for too long, thank God.
No.
But I've felt that.
I definitely,
Yeah.
and look, all guys feel this in different ways and in different times and in different spaces. Okay? But if you find that you're only happy when you're with a woman who's validating your existence, or only happy when you're at work in the context of your hierarchy, you're sick. You're sick pup. You're not doing good.
I have always found like part of my independent streak is like rebelling against the need for validation.
Sure.
And that's where I would argue, like, well, there's independence in that sense that what I would say is good. Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a bit broad, but we have talked before, I think maybe even the last episode, you said something to the effect of like independence, or even, yeah, just earlier right now, like we're kind of shitting on the idea of independence a little bit, but like it's very broad. It's very broad. Like there's things that I'm
shitting on the idea of independence to the point where you think that owning liminal spaces means that you have access to liminal experiences.
Like you can be a one-man show. You can be like a self-satisfied.
You think that if you own all the liminal venues, then you are an island.
Buy things that you can't really actually buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem with late-stage capitalism is the idea that everybody produces objects that don't actually have any value.
Right. It's all meta. It's all abstract. It's like game tokens.
Everything becomes the alligator farm. So the alligator. So I went to.
Please elaborate.
So Colorado Gators is this place in Alamosa County, something like that.
I can't believe this exists.
This exists. It is like one of the largest alligator parks. It's basically Tiger King, where the guy owns a bunch of really, really, really super amazing, moderately. They would be illegal for you to own. Like you have to have an exotic pets license, and he has like albino anacondas and stuff. Like really dangerous.
How far away is that from here?
It's 3 hours and 45 minutes.
That would be an awesome day trip.
It was ridiculous. Okay. So we went out there and it said that this was originally a tilapia farm.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, so the guy originally, he's raising tilapia, right? So that the people in Colorado, in Western Colorado can have fish to eat at the local supermarket. Right. Well, he's got a problem with his tilapia. He's got too much of it. So he's got to figure out, how do I get rid of all this tilapia? Well, it turns out alligators love tilapia. And he's sitting on a hot spring, which means that the water that comes up out of the ground is at like 80 degrees. So alligators actually thrive in this environment, so he can get rid of his tilapia to these alligators. Well, he gets so many damn alligators that people start coming out to see the alligators.
Okay.
Now you go there, he's got 2 tilapia, he's got a 40-acre ranch or something, he's got 2 tilapia pools, and he's got 1 million alligators, and you pay money to him to buy alligator food to feed his alligators, of which he does not supply the tilapia to anybody. So this is late-stage capitalism at its absolute finest.
So originally the point was to bring fish to Colorado because it's Colorado. There's not a lot of bodies of water. There's literally no ocean, so there's no coast. That's a beautiful, wonderful thing to do.
Yes.
Let's bring some
He's providing real
fish.
value.
That is obviously real value. Eating fish is good for your brain. Everybody can participate in that unless you're a vegetarian or whatever. That is obviously of extreme real life value.
That's right.
The thing, the alligator, which he brought in to solve a very specific little problem, became the product itself, and then it is not.
And now if the world were
That's
to go...
a beautiful metaphor for descending into that hell of abstraction.
Yes, it's what Netflix is.
Wow.
Netflix is basically just a creepy alligator farm of a remnant of a thing that used to provide value once upon a time that now exists literally as a parasitic entertainment loop.
Parasitic entertainment loop.
Like Skyrim.
A Vindaloop.
Like any of those like DLC type video games where they want to get you into a play loop, right?
Sure.
I don't know that anybody else looks at the alligator farm as this horrific dystopian, like not even metaphor, just like actual existence of late stage capitalism, where I suddenly realized when I finally looked at it, I realized what late stage capitalism was. It's when you had a thing that provided value that now exists only to provide entertainment, and everything is moving towards a path where it exists to provide entertainment. Because
we're
value,
all aristocrats.
Because value doesn't actually profit very much. That's like what I was talking about with the Amazon businesses that we were talking about the other day.
Yeah.
That if you provide real value to somebody, you can make 2x on your money. But if you provide a crazy amount of hope to people, you could get 20x on your money.
Ugh.
Because hope is another form of dopamine, which is entertainment.
Yay.
Hope is entertainment. You crypto ghouling on your phone is entertainment.
Dull, constant entertainment,
Ping,
like a
ping, ping,
foie gras duck.
Yes. And then you sit there and you wonder why
your liver's getting all fat.
You wonder why you have no meaning and why you feel so listless. It's probably because your life is full of you going from one alligator farm to the next alligator farm and never actually getting a chance to have a bite of tilapia because nobody's selling it. You can't go to a church and get value.
All the fruit is wax. It's not real.
Nobody is providing any value to anyone.
Yeah.
Unless you get a really nice pour over coffee from like a, really nice, So
there's a Kabbalistic concept called cliff off.
Okay.
Right, which I believe in Hebrew roughly translates to husk.
Okay.
And it's like basically it's the lowest level of existence that has like the smallest amount of like divinity in it that it can be considered real. Okay. Just
like what is
so a great like
monad? Like what is the smallest monad of truth? It's like the tiniest particle that the thing could still be technically considered divine.
Right. That's qliphonic. And it's represented like so the qliphonic spheres of like the tree of life, or like the underground part, like the upside down in like the Stranger Things world, kind of like this shadow realm of like it's barely real. And a great like way of thinking about something qliphonic would be like it's wax fruit, or it's like the shell of something. It looks like the thing. It represents something like, platonically real, I guess, but there's nothing there. It is completely hollow. It's completely not real.
Yeah.
In essence,
Yeah. There's a part of me that wishes I didn't I wasn't at the Colorado Gators feeling this way. Like there was a part of me that wishes I could have just enjoyed it. But the idea that this used to be a place that provided actual nutrition and actual value to people, and now it just costs $40 to go and see the way that they solved a problem.
Which, I mean, I will admit, I'd love to go do
And
that.
it's totally worth it. It's totally worth the money.
Or it'd make a really nice day trip, too, you know? Like, maybe...
No, and 5 miles away is the UFO watchtower, where more UFO pictures have ever been taken than anywhere else on Earth. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's the Great Sand Dunes, the tallest sand dunes in North America, right? Giant 14,000-foot cliffs, and the weirdest place in America as far as I'm concerned.
That is pretty weird.
But at the end of the day...
There is something beautiful about it, in a way.
There is something beautiful about it.
But I guess it's only hellish dystopia, cliffotic hell, meta-reality nightmare when, like, that becomes the main course. When that becomes the driving force. When that becomes more important, generally speaking, than the actual fish. Then we're in trouble.
Right.
But when it's like, okay, well, the fish is number one, you know, and then of course, by diversity of life and reality, we have these like hilarious like anomalies and deviations and sideshows, which you could say are the spice of life.
I would fully agree that the idea of owning an alligator to get rid of your like leftover fish is not only hilarious, it's hilarious, it's interesting.
It's one of those things I'd be kind of
and there's
glad
no way on
exists
earth the guy
in a
doesn't
way.
make more money with his alligator farm than he ever did with his fish farm.
Sure.
I mean, like, there's just no way on earth that's the case. However, there is a bunch of people that are getting subpar fish now who, because some fat guy from Ohio wants to go and see an alligator that he saw in a sideshow on his way to the sand dunes.
Yeah, it's hierarchies here, order of operations.
It's just weird.
Maslow, like what should really, if we lose touch with reality in that basic way of like, hey, wait, let's not get too lost in I guess you could say clown world or like the fantastical, the absurd, which is, I love that shit. I do. I love the chaos and absurdity of reality. It's a beautiful thing, but yeah, with that. But if that becomes the baseline, if that becomes the norm, we're in trouble.
Right.
Then you get famine. Then you get ennui, and I'd say maybe probably ennui then famine. Probably more in that kind of.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. Once you realize that like you're fine, it's fine, everything's fine, it's all just all right. It's all right, and everything's all right. It's fine.
It's okay.
You would be happier in famine.
Yeah, well, because then you gotta. Every day you're doing things that you absolutely have to do.
And the bread that you do eat, when you eat,
all the relationships
you'll actually like.
Yeah.
You would enjoy that one bite of bread that you ate once a week more than you enjoy all the birthday cakes of your entire listless, it's fine existence.
Right, it's the strawberry and the tiger, that whole story where the man's getting chased by the tiger and then he jumps off the cliff and he hangs on to this little branch and then there's a little strawberry and it was the most delicious strawberry he'd ever tasted. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want to be... I don't think that it is within the human desire capacity to want to be all right. I know for me, as soon as I sense that I feel that I'm all right or listless or whatever, that's when I generally will shake things up for the worse.
Sure. And here comes the trickster.
And enter the trickster.
And that's his job. And it's important because it's like you're gonna, without him showing up to be Loki or whatever, like maybe you're just gonna sit there and get bed sores in the hospital bed while you're on this constant dopamine trip of nothingness.
Colorado alligators and Stranger Things.
Go.
It is the world that we live in. And you wonder why you have this existential ennui, just this meh. Where
it creeps in for me every now and then. It does.
It certainly creeps in for me, which is why we're discussing it.
Yeah.
Because where the balance is between how much responsibility you should take and how much, because I have done the maximum. I've been a responsibility maximalist recently,
Okay.
and I don't think it's correct.
I don't either. I think it could really burn you out and do the exact opposite of what it was intended.
100%. So
Yeah.
there is an easygoingness about life that I don't possess.
Mm-hmm.
That I can make people uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because I'm not very easygoing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'd say it's probably one of the last things like that I am is easygoing. Very genuine. You will never not know how I'm feeling. Like I'm pretty genuine.
I will give you that 100%.
I think I'm a pretty authentic person.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
But I'm not easy.
I would not describe you as easygoing. No.
I would not describe me as particularly optimistic either.
I would honestly, okay. So we do have an odd couple thing going here because I would call it strangely optimistic despite, there is a lot of darkness in my existential mind or whatever, but like I have a strange sense of optimism, like everything's going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah.
And I am easygoing.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Yeah.
That has its pluses and its minuses. I'm not gonna say like
at
I've
some
got
point I
something
feel like
figured out where it's like, yeah, I got it all figured out. Like, no, sometimes that can be a problem. Sometimes it can be the best fucking thing ever.
I have a problem with the easygoing thing. Like in terms of like, I wish I had more of the easygoing thing, but I'm afraid to adopt even the slightest ounce of it.
Do you think you like freeze and stasis all of a sudden?
It's something like that. It's something like
because
that.
you've had like the easygoing energy is just so damned up that when you release it, it's going to be a tidal wave.
No, not really.
Everything's fine.
I mean, that's how I am when I like go on my video game binges, right?
Okay, I love your video game binges.
When I go on my video game binges, I mean, they last for a very long time, and they are hours. And I mean, like it's 15 hours a day for a month. It's not like
it's
not
ironically
like 3 days.
not easygoing because you are playing Elden Ring as if it is your job, but surely you are relaxing.
Actually, no, you're right. No, because it's so like that's why I never finished Elden Ring.
Yeah,
I got to the last boss and I went. I actually decided it was a statement. I went. The story is so bad. I'm not going to give you the 6 hours it would take to finish, because I'm not going to reward some data set of a finish. I refuse to award that.
See, I never finished Elden Ring either, and it's my more easygoing side where it's like, actually, partially, totally agree with you about the story thing. I'm like, I don't like putting so much time into something where I feel completely lost. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I'm going to play something for this long and be like that enraptured in it, I need some kind of story. I need something. It just feels so isolating and lonely and weird.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and also this is a massive game. I'll own it forever. I'll just probably chip away at it when I'm bored every now and then. And when I feel like the need to have that ball-busting, challenging, open-world experience, I can
just go outside and go do something that is a ball-busting, open-world experience.
Probably. I'm going to grab some coffee real quick.
Yeah.
I could either edit this part out, or if you have something you can talk about solo.
Oh, I don't think I've ever talked to a camera solo and about anything existentialist. Well, hey guys. Sans Bryan. That's the hardest part about being a guy, I think, is understanding that you are who you are, but you have your own responsibility to find a tribe that actually needs you. And that means finding something that you actually want to do in the context of who you want to do it with and actually care. Like, actually care. I think that's the thing that we all struggle with the most is, well, if I if I go to church or if I join the, scouts or whatever, or if I do whatever it is that I'm doing, now I have to be there every Sunday. And damn right you have to be there every Sunday. Or now damn right you have to be there every Wednesday night or every Friday morning or whatever. But damn right. But in exchange for that, you get friends. You get meaning. You get to accomplish something. And I think one of the hardest parts I could say for me is that I've had many times in my life where it's like you jump in on that community-driven thing just because you want to be a part of a community. And honestly, like, unless you believe in the cause, you can kind of just be an ideological weirdo. Like, at the end of the day, men in action.
Men in action.
Tagline, let's do this.
YMCA.
Yeah, men in action. What would it take for you to have, like, a... Okay, you're in a band.
Yeah.
Okay? And the band says, we're going to practice Tuesday nights.
That's our practice night.
And we're going to practice from 5 to 9.
Pretty close.
All right.
Pretty close, Drew.
Is that annoying?
No.
Or is that awesome?
Awesome.
Even though you never get another Tuesday night ever again?
I love music and playing in a band, so I would want that, and I do.
And
also, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a practice Nazi. I would practice 3 times a week if we could. That's my grinding.
Huh.
Like, like the role-playing game grinding. Like, for me and music, like getting my band stupidly tight and perfect, I can play the same song 5 times in a row if I know it's giving us like 5 experience points each time. Love it. Love it. Anyway, continue.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The reason that most people don't wind up in a community is because the idea of giving up every single Sunday from 9 a.m. to noon, it's just too much. Or giving up every Tuesday night from 5 to 9, it's just too much.
I think the ones that work, they do it like bi-weekly or, first of every month, or it's not as like every week the level of commitment, right? Yeah. And then there's like more of an optional thing around it. Like, okay, so really the requirement is the first Saturday of every month, and then you're in the thing. From there, it's more like optional. You can do more.
Well, and it's better if there's some sort of context. Like, I appreciate I like the band context. Similar to like the mountaineering climbing partner context. We climb at the gym on Tuesdays from 5 to 9. And then once a month we go out and we do a trip, right? And we go climbing, like we go climb a big mountain for 3 days. Like I've never actually had a climbing partner, but I've always hoped that would actually be what that would look like.
Okay.
But I imagine in the band sense, it's the same idea, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have Tuesday from 5 to 9 arbitrarily. It's because there is an actual thing that you would actually like to do, right? Yeah. Wherein the practice occurs for that purpose.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Like for example, it used to be that you would go to church from 9 to noon for the purpose of first of all doing the collective thing, right?
Yeah.
Basically the practicing the religion part. But then there was the other part where later on in the week you would then have your sign-ups for who's going to go and feed at the homeless shelter this week, who's going to go and volunteer at the prison this week, right? Who's going to go and serve at the food bank this week, who's going to do hospice and hospital care this week. Okay? And then church was more of the gathering point to figure out who was going to go and serve in the community and at what point in time and who are you going to go with. Right.
Yeah.
That's the way it's supposed to work, technically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that thing, but why be in a band when you can have Guitar Hero in your private movie theater?
Oh, because it's nowhere near the real thing. Oh. That's like, why not marry a 9? Like, why marry a 9 when I can watch porno?
Because you don't have to have the responsibility of being married to a 9. You don't have to stay in shape. You don't actually have to look that good.
Rhetorical question.
It may be rhetorical, but most guys don't want to have the responsibility of being married to a 9, which is why nobody ever asks 9s and 10s out.
Because they're high maintenance?
Not that they're high maintenance. It's that you have to actually be worth that. Otherwise, you become a howdy. Like, how did he get her?
I never heard of that.
You never heard of a howdy? Yeah, how did
he do that?
How did this guy get that girl? It's because the average guy looks at some girl who's 3 or 4 points above him, and he does not want to be responsible to have to then elevate his entire game status
I'm not worthy.
to be that awesome to be with that girl.
Right. So the howdy gives the girl the attention.
He would rather just play Guitar Hero.
So he treats the 9 like a 6, and then she goes for it because he has balls,
Yes.
seemingly.
And that is literally all it takes, generally speaking.
Okay. Howdy.
So what's the cure to existential ennui?
Join a band.
Join a band.
Yeah.
Next time you think about wanting to own a liminal experience, just go have the liminal experience. It's also like 1/50th of the price.
Yeah, I mean, maybe also consider that existentialism's just kind of lame, really. I mean,
Like really, really, really.
it's actually not cool. It was cool when you were 19 to 23. Maybe you went to France for a little bit. I don't know. You hammed up the whole thing.
You watched some Jordan Peterson.
and some
You cleaned your room.
Yeah. Well, no, that's lame. No thanks. Jordan Peterson is objectively lame. Objectively, like, he's not cool. There's not a shred of coolness to him. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have an important message. Okay? It doesn't mean that, there's not completely shitting on the guy, but like, is he cool? No. You can ham it up and do the existentialist thing and like make it cool for a little bit. Girls might even like it. If you're a young guy and you're doing that, like, okay, I get it. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't really think there's any coolness there. It just seems like a lot of suffering for no good reason. And I think there is a lot of that in the sort of manosphere. That's what we're talking about today. And I don't think people need to be suffering so much, despite the fact that there is, clown world and the craziness of modernity. But there's real problems. There are real things we should be upset about that we should be doing something about.
Like what?
Monsanto. Not being able to grow your own food in some places. Like, I don't know, the FDA favoring certain groups and their ways of doing things and completely diminishing others. I mean, I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube,
right. There's a lot of things.
A million more things I could say. Yeah.
The fight for raw milk.
But then there's something utterly terrible and nihilistic about as soon as something becomes political. Oh, that's political. So then therefore it's meaningless and dumb and it's Facebook and it's an energy drain and it's stupid and you're alienating yourself and politics bad. Right. That's a thing. Oh, I don't want to be so political. I don't want to be so consumed. Well, yeah. So I guess that's why something like food, something really simple you can rally around. Well, we all should be able to grow our own food, right? Isn't that something?
Well, there is the idea of
political.
Like, who can grow the largest pumpkin?
That's called the state fair.
All right.
That's fun.
Or like carving Garth Brooks out of butter.
Okay.
That would actually be a lot. I guess. The reason why I'm saying this is because there's probably a lot that goes into making a 900-pound pumpkin. Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like you can just like it's like an art.
Yeah.
Group of people that you make art with. Large collective art is. I mean, I'm trying. What I would like to do is I would like to figure out the perfect existential group. Not existential. Let's just throw that out there. The perfect manosphere time, right, is clearly the Tower of Babel. All the guys getting together and being like, hey, look, we all speak the same language, right? Yep. We all have literally unlimited resources because there are only like 3,000 of us in the world, right? Right. You want to build a tower and see if we can get all the way to the sky? Yeah, let's do it. And it's like horrifically punished by God. But all of humanity was like, dude, you want to do this thing? Yes.
Yeah, why not?
I'm not saying we need to build a Tower of Babel. What I'm saying is that there is a collective mentality when it's like, hi, I'm going to go and do this thing. Do you want to do it? Right? But in America, everybody owns everything. It's all owned all of the time. So there isn't like some space that you just like say like, we're going to go to the woods and build a hut. And who owns the hut? Well, nobody owns the hut. It's just a hut. We just want to go make an ashram out there.
Mm-hmm. That would be fun.
Look, I've stayed in ashrams that are abandoned ashrams in the Sierras.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like they're awesome. And they're super rad.
It doesn't belong to anybody. Some people
literally
had a great
belongs to
time
nobody.
making one. They used it. They know it's
They
there.
used it for 50 years.
And then some random hiker can use it.
Absolutely. You just walk up there and
It's like a video game. It's like
right at the base of Mount Langley.
Very cool.
There is an ashram, and you could totally stay there as long as you want. It takes a pretty gnarly 4x4 to get to it. Then you got to hike in, and it's everything you could ever need is literally at the ashram. It's a little worn down. It's a little rustic. You know, it's a little creepy. It definitely has some Blair Witch vibes. Like, not gonna lie, like 100%.
Yeah.
But you know what? I look at that ashram and I think these guys probably had a ton of fun making this thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's something really interesting. Okay, so we went to the Cave of the Winds tour.
Okay.
So Cave of the Winds is this giant cave where you can go and go spelunking and stuff like that. So part of what I did with the kids is I picked them up when they got out of school on Friday. And on Saturday morning, I woke them up at 6:30 in the morning and I said, hey, kids, we're going on an adventure. Okay?
How did they respond to that?
They had no idea what we were doing. So they got in the car. This isn't their first time going on an adventure with Dad, but it was a brutal adventure. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, the kids cry because I push them, but then they get to the top and they're like, wow, this was amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And so what did we do? We went to Cave of the Winds, so we went like spelunking. We did like a high ropes course where you like, you know, climbing up on really tall like poles with like the belay things and all that. So we did high ropes. But at the Cave of the Winds, there was this guy, and they were like Jim Jeffries or some guy named Jeffrey something. And they were like, basically, he gave us a bunch of money to help hollow out this part of the cave. And the only thing he asked is that whenever we gave a tour, we mentioned his name. That's the only thing he wanted in return for all the money he gave. And here we are, 100 years later, they're still saying this guy's name, right? 100 years later, I'm still sleeping in this ashram at the base of Mount Langley, right? Or sleeping at the Muir Hut in the Sierras. I don't know the guy's name, but they left something of their own, and I got to use it, and I was grateful that they had made it. And I think there's something about that I would like to make something and leave behind and not have my name there necessarily, but just to know that this is a thing that's going to be of use to humanity when I'm gone.
Yeah. Cool. That's a good reason to do something. I have a question. Is art kind of like the alligator guy in a way? Like where it's not a necessity like food.
What was it? Let me check to see.
Okay, so fish.
Yeah.
That's food. Art. That's music. That's paintings. That's statues. That's all these things. Very, very important. I'm a huge fan of art. I feel like without art, there's no humanity. But is there maybe a dark side to art where, like, in, late stage capitalism, I guess it's the term we're throwing around, like, where everybody wants to be a basketball player. Everybody wants to be a rock star.
How about this?
That whole thing.
We're going to get on universal basic income, and then everybody will be an artist. That will make all art worth nothing.
Yeah. It will. I already kind of feel like that right now.
It's like
for
that
example,
with YouTube already, man.
I've got all my gear over there, right?
Sure. You could make anything with that.
And it's amazing, and I have such a hard time. I mean, I do stuff, don't get me wrong, and I have my little experiments, and I have fun, but, like, I always thought, like, as a kid, like, oh, if I had this type of, like, capacity, I would just be crushing all the time. And I just find strangely, it kind of puts me in a lonely, like, weird place, rather than this, like, awesome place of, like, unlimited possibility. Like, that happens every now and then, and I live for those moments. And you know, I suffer to get there every now and then.
That's how I feel when I'm writing sometimes.
But there's so much music out there. There's so much art. I just feel like, well, what am I even doing? It feels weird sometimes, and it shouldn't feel that way. It shouldn't, and it drives me nuts. So that's like, if you want to talk about suffering and some weird, abstract, existential, whatever, I mean...
It is weird.
I've got it all, it's all there.
Everybody can be an artist.
Yeah.
No, they can't. No, look, just because you have a piano does not mean that you can be a musician.
No, of course not. But I'm good, and I feel lost a lot of the time, you know?
Yeah, Steph messaged me the other day, and he said, Drew, why aren't you writing? I miss your fiction. You're a great fiction writer. Will you please write some more fiction? Because I miss reading your fiction.
Nice.
And that made me think, oh, well, that's high praise. And I do miss writing fiction.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to write a short story. And we'll publish it on our channel just because it'll be fun.
Like a Song of Helmgar?
No, it's I know. Well, I do. Oh man, I love that book. That's a great. Do you know how many of those I have? Like at that near caliber, I have like 6 of those.
Oh, cool.
That I've gotten like that far in, and then it just kind of. It's not that it fizzles.
Something happens.
I mean, what happens when you get, you lay down, 5 half-pieced tracks and you're working on now? Have you ever tried to work on a solo album?
No, because once I started doing this, the album thing started phasing out.
No, you do an album for you. You don't do an album for other people.
I know.
I have
a hard time doing...
Albums are about expressing an entire range of emotions that you need to express to encapsulate 1 year of your life when you weren't on tour.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of a fucking album.
I have a hard time making music just for me.
So if I told you the music I want, would you have an easier time writing?
Typically, yes.
If you told me what kind of story you wanted to read, I would have an easier time writing.
Would you?
Infinitely.
Huh. Yeah. And it's so weird because I feel like I'm the type of person who should have absolutely no problem doing things purely just for me. And I have, in the past, had no problem with that. No problem at all. I have a hard drive with probably 200 gigs of exactly what that sounds like. But I guess the problem was eventually where I was like, well, I feel like I already did that. So it's just not the same, Like, it would be, I'd be so much better off if I had some kind of community where even there was like a little bit of competition, there's like another guy that makes, similar sounding stuff to me. And he's like, kind of pushing me and we're pushing back on each other. Like that sort of thing is so important. Or else nothing freaking happens. It seems like. Right?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about? The whole, the independent ennui versus the communal Chad, if you will.
Did you listen to the story that I sent you? Did you get a chance to listen to that?
Wasn't that I started to, but isn't that the original?
Yeah, but
I've heard it before, I think.
Yeah, you would have heard the first 8 minutes of it.
More than that.
No, because the whole...
Oh, you changed it?
Oh, yeah, that whole thing has been written and rewritten. There's I think I wrote 25 chapters.
Yeah, it opens up with the Tower of Babel of dicks.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sales bros.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I really love, I've listened to the first line so many times now. And the first line is, I feel like a dick.
Yeah.
I'd like not to feel like a dick, but it's hard sometimes. And it's such a terrible,
Good one, Dad.
it's such a terrible, and it's such an awful introduction to a story.
It works.
But it's really good. Yeah, I think I'll write a short story for everybody. I'm basically stealing a writing prompt from Chuck Palahniuk.
Cool.
We'll see how that shakes out. I plan
All
on
right.
actually getting started on that. What are you going to make this week? So in the next 3 days, I'm going to start writing this short story, and I will have some of it to read here at Existentialist Anonymous.
So recently,
Yeah.
you challenged me to take a sample of the video game Rygar. To make it into a lo-fi hip-hop kind of thing.
Did you make it?
No, but I have there was a project file that says Rygar that has the sample in it that has a palette. So there is an easel of colors and randomness smashed together and experiments being done with the concept.
Well, the thing I am working on is a story about that same general era.
Good era.
It's a good era.
You know, I feel like nostalgia is more than just member berries right now, because man, the 80s was cool because there was scarcity in like the technology and there were places you had to go and everything was more meaningful. It was. And that's why people are so damn nostalgic. It's because that is less and less and less happening now. There's an actual reason. It's not just the South Park member berries of like, oh yeah, nostalgia. There's a flaw to nostalgia because you can go, oh, remember this? It was so great. And it's like, well, maybe it actually wasn't that great. You know, like high school memories. It's like you forget about the parts where you were suffering and probably most of the time sucked. But then you had those explosive, awesome moments where suddenly there was a party out in the woods and it happened so serendipitously. And then it was just a constant happening. And then everybody talked about it for 3 months, you know, and you're like, why do those happenings never happen anymore? You forget about all the times that were boring and dumb and nothing really fucking happens. But, no, I do think...
It is not member berries.
No,
No. Here's the deal. Member berries...
Yes.
Nostalgia ceases to be a member berry when it is an experience that you are retelling or reliving.
Huh.
Member berries are collective unconscious moments, not personalized.
More of a
nostalgic moments.
dopamine hit. Like, I remember.
Yeah, like I've got my my Ewok shirt. You know, it says Summer Camp 1983, and with a picture of Wicket on it.
Nice.
Right.
Very nice.
From the Ewok Adventure.
Cool.
Okay, like just
You're wearing that next episode.
objectively awesome from a shirt perspective. Like it's just pure member berry, like you know, like flan or something. Like I'm assuming member berries become flan.
Probably.
I'm not sure why. It's a member berry smoothie. How about that?
Okay.
So, in 3 days, when we podcast again, Lord willing, I will present a paragraph or two, or maybe a little bit more, of my short story. And will you commit to having some Rygar hip-hop lo-fi?
Absolutely. No,
Can we at least make this podcast
totally.
about us
Totally.
making art?
We will do that. But here's the thing.
Okay.
And this is I don't know if this is a flaw or a feature with me, but almost always when I have those parameters, like I make it like a lo-fi hip hop, and then I pursue it. Whenever I have those constraints, it helps me so much to actually get in there and do something. But I almost always completely disregard the restraints. They're like great to get me started, and then you might be like, this is not lo-fi hip hop, and this is very strange.
All it is,
but it
all
does
it is
have a
is writing
sample
prompt.
of Rygar.
Okay, all it is. Okay, so
You will get something.
All right.
Yes.
So the writing prompt that I'm working with is Chuck Palahniuk, and he's talking about a writing group that he's in, and they were discussing. They just said, I don't even remember what they were talking about in this thing. But I listened to him on all these podcasts when he released his book, The Invention of Sound. And this gal talked about, there's like, I have no idea what was going on. And then she said, well, maybe that's how the box of porn in the woods gets there.
Ah, right.
Right, you're smiling. Every guy who did not have access to the internet till they were in high school, who played in creeks or wandered on train tracks or snuck behind alleys, ran into the mysterious box, the proverbial box of porn in the woods. Like actual porn, with the pages all like crispy and stuck together and stuff. And your first experience with porn was probably some sort of bizarre high art porn hustler, right? Where they had like all these rules and stuff. Anyways, not that I'm going to write a short story about porn, okay? But the writing prompt essentially that there is this weird 30-year window under which one could encounter the box of porn in the woods.
Yeah, now it's gone.
It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not saying that I hold some sort of like porn nostalgia. Okay, I'm not saying that. Okay, please hear me say that. However, there is an era under which you would trip over certain things that you did not have a choice about how you found out about things. And before the internet, you found out about things. How'd you find out about your first role-playing game? How did you find out about, the fatalities in Mortal Kombat? How did you first, learn how to splice wires together because your AC adapter on your Nintendo kept breaking? Who was the kid who first discovered to blow in the back of a cartridge to get Rygar to start working again?
Which I have heard does not work and is objectively bad for the cartridge.
100%. But that doesn't matter. The reason that it would work is because you would get moisture on it, and that would actually help with the connectivity, I believe. It wasn't the blowing on it, it was actually the moisture getting onto it that helped with the connectivity.
I mean, which you would think would be a bad thing.
Long term, it probably would cause rust or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's the thing I would like to look at, is that era of what it was like to be a kid then.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're the last of the Mohicans.
Yeah.
There will never be another era of unsurveilled, bored latchkey kids.
Nope.
And I'm really proud to say that I was 100% latchkey, born and raised.
I wanted to be.
From the day I was born till I graduated high school, nobody gave a fuck where I was.
That's all I ever wanted in life.
Really?
That is all I ever wanted. My entire childhood, all the way through it, was to be that kid. I was friends with that kid. I was jealous of that kid. I wanted that life so bad. I really did.
It was quite lonely.
I wanted it.
Because nobody cared where you were.
There is a dark side to it.
The dark side is
It's definitely a dark side.
the dark side is
Actually, one of my best friends when I was like 13 or no, younger than that anyway, he was a little bit older than me, but he had that going on. And his parents were like fairly like wealthy too, and so he had stuff and things and freedom, and I was
Fruit
like,
by the foot.
that's just the coolest.
he had
like,
fruit by the foot and he had his own basement.
But he was jealous of, yeah, basically. And he was like, he was jealous
We all had
of
that
me.
friend, right?
He was jealous of me because, my mom was a little more up my ass, and he's like, well,
She cares.
yeah. And it was sad. He like teared up and everything, and I was like, it was the first time I had ever really considered that, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, people used to mock me in high school about that.
Really?
Yeah, at least I have parents who care.
Ugh. That's mean.
So it's actually not true. There's actually a whole lot of there's a ton of texture there because life just isn't that simple. When you're in high school, like my dad and I are best friends now.
Right. Yeah.
Like when my mom and I talk, we'll talk for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's mostly that I was also the last kid of like, I have an older brother, older sister. There was an adopted foster brother in there, and I was the last one. Like they're just, look, by the time you get to that third kid, I mean, like worms is a sufficient dinner if you had enough of them. Like, like that's true.
Yeah.
And that was me. So we'll cover that. So we are both agreeing that this podcast does not exist to just be a podcast. We are actually going to bring art to the podcast.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, any excuse to like have to make something and be accountable for it, I think is healthy. Yeah.
I think that at some
maybe when we
point-
get enough viewership, we can have little contests and stuff.
Yeah,
Cool.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it'd be super cool.
In the meantime, if you're still here, holy cow, leave a comment that you made it. Be like, I made it.
Please do. Join the discussion.
I made it. And tell us what kind of art you want to make. All right. Well, I'm Drew Littlejohns.
Bryan Wright.
And we are the Men Who Stare at Cups live from Phoenix Ridge.
Sayonara.
See you next time.
All right. That was fun.